What if I told you that your daily life, your routine, your beliefs, even your dreams were never truly yours? What if the world you see, the rules you follow, the goals you chase, was quietly designed to keep you asleep, not awake? You weren't born to be average. Not spiritually, not mentally, not energetically. Yet, from the moment you opened your eyes to this world, an invisible web began to form around your consciousness. A web spun by society, by systems, by silent agreements made long before your birth. You were handed a name, a language, a belief system, taught to strive, to consume, to obey, but never to question, never to look inward and ask, who am I beyond this costume I've been given? You see, spiritual mediocrity isn't a natural state. It's a cultivated one, a carefully engineered reality meant to keep your inner fire dim, your perception narrow, and your soul distracted by the glittering illusions of the material world. This video is not just a breakdown of how society keeps you spiritually numb. It's a map, a revelation, an initiation into a deeper understanding of the forces that shape your inner world and how to break free. We'll journey through the ancient warnings hidden in forgotten texts, unravel the hypnotic systems disguised as normal life, and explore the sacred keys to reclaiming your spiritual sovereignty. Because once you see how the illusion works, you can never unsee it. And from that moment on, you're no longer a passive participant in this grand play. You become something society fears most, a spiritually awakened soul who cannot be controlled. Let's begin. Long before the modern world was wired with screens, systems, and noise, ancient civilizations spoke in symbols and silence. They didn't just build cities, they built inner worlds. Cultures like Kemet, Vedic India, and the Essenes of the desert carried sacred knowledge about the soul, the cosmos, and the hidden architecture of human consciousness. These ancient peoples believed that each human was a microcosm of the divine, a fragment of infinite intelligence wrapped in flesh. Life, to them, wasn't a race or a marketplace. It was a sacred unfolding, a school for the soul. And the ultimate purpose? Not success, not status, but remembrance, to awaken from the illusion of separation and return to the source within. But as empires rose, something shifted. A darker current began to flow through human history. Knowledge, once free and passed from sage to seeker in hidden groves and temples, became hoarded, weaponized, and veiled beneath doctrine and dogma. The spiritual elite, the priest kings, philosopher mystics, and awakened teachers, were gradually silenced, erased, or turned into distant mythologies. What replaced them was control. You see, a society of spiritually sovereign individuals is ungovernable in the traditional sense. You cannot manipulate someone who knows their worth is not tied to wealth. You cannot enslave the mind of someone who understands the power of their thoughts. And you cannot sell false gods to someone who has touched the divine spark within themselves. So instead of cultivating inner power, society began programming outer obedience. This wasn't always done with overt malice. Often, it came cloaked in order, protection, and civilization. But make no mistake, the result was the same. The soul was slowly put to sleep. And the dream of spiritual greatness was replaced with the grind of survival, reputation, and routine. Even today, remnants of those ancient teachings still echo in the background, hidden in mystical texts, whispered through forgotten languages, buried beneath layers of mistranslation and cultural suppression. The Gnostic Gospels, the Hermetic writings, the Upanishads, the Tao Te Ching, all speak the same truth, that within you lies a dormant power, and the world you see is but a fraction of what is real. But ask yourself, why are these teachings not at the center of modern life? Why are they considered fringe, esoteric, or irrelevant? Because if they weren't, the entire structure of society would collapse. A world built on fear cannot coexist with individuals awakened to love. A system sustained by hierarchy cannot thrive if all beings realize they are divine. And a culture addicted to distraction cannot survive if people begin to look inward. This isn't just a philosophical observation. It's a spiritual war waged silently, generation after generation. And the battlefield is your mind. The ancient ones warned of this time, a period when truth would be ridiculed, seekers would be silenced, and humanity would trade its soul for comfort. Not because people are evil, but because they've forgotten who they are. But remembrance is rebellion, and remembering begins with seeing the illusion for what it is. The training begins early. Before you know words, before you understand the rules of the world, something subtle begins to shape your inner landscape. You're praised for conformity, not curiosity. You're rewarded for sitting still, memorizing facts, and following instructions, never for wondering why any of it matters. The modern education system, for all its claims of enlightenment, was not designed to awaken the soul. It was engineered during the industrial age to produce workers, orderly, obedient, predictable. Children are lined up in rows, told when to speak, when to move, when to think, and most dangerously, what to believe. Spirituality, in this world, is either sterilized into a Sunday ritual or dismissed entirely as superstition. You're subtly taught that material success is proof of worth, that emotions are a distraction, and that the unseen world, intuition, energy, soul, is childish or irrational. In this way, the sacred is systematically extracted from everyday life. It's not just school. The media continues the indoctrination. Advertisements whisper that you are incomplete without something external, without the right body, the right clothes, the right lifestyle. News cycles train you to fear, to divide, to judge. Entertainment glorifies chaos and distraction. Rarely do you see a reflection of your true, divine nature, only distortions that keep you reaching outward instead of looking inward. And so you grow up mistaking noise for knowledge, stimulation for aliveness, and busyness for purpose. But the damage runs deeper. Over time, you internalize the idea that your worth must be earned, that you must perform for love, prove your value, and constantly upgrade yourself to be acceptable. This isn't spiritual growth, it's spiritual exhaustion. A hamster wheel disguised as personal development. The irony is that the very thing society fears most, your stillness, your silence, your inner knowing, is the gateway to your liberation. But few are shown how to access it. Fewer still are given permission. And so the average person lives with a gnawing sense of incompletion, a quiet ache, a feeling that something is missing, but they can't quite name it. That ache is the soul calling out from beneath the rubble of conditioning. It's the part of you that remembers, that knows you came here for more than this. But instead of being guided inward, people are medicated, distracted, or told to get over it. The symptoms of spiritual starvation are labeled as depression, anxiety, or failure, and treated with more of the very system that caused the disconnection. This is not accidental. A spiritually average population is easier to control. If you believe that your worth comes from outside of you, then you'll chase endlessly, buying, obeying, conforming, never realizing that the treasure you seek is within. But if even one person wakes up, if even one soul remembers, they become a mirror, a spark, a threat to the machinery of forgetfulness. This is why mystics, shamans, and sages throughout history have always been pushed to the edges of society. Their mere presence unsettles the status quo, because their eyes hold something different: clarity, depth, a freedom that cannot be bought, sold, or replicated. This freedom, this awakening, is not reserved for the few. It is your birthright. But to reclaim it, you must begin to see the patterns that keep you bound. You must look at the system not as a victim, but as a witness. The first step to transcendence is awareness. If the first layer of spiritual conditioning is built on distraction and obedience, the second layer is more insidious. It hides beneath the surface, shaping your thoughts in ways that feel like your own. These are not overt chains, they are silent agreements. Assumptions you've inherited without question. Myths dressed as common sense. Ideas so deeply embedded in your psyche, you no longer recognize them as foreign. Take, for example, the myth of linear progress. Society teaches you that growth must be constant, visible, and always upward. If you're not producing, you're regressing. If you're not achieving, you're failing. But spiritual evolution doesn't follow this path. It is cyclical. It spirals inward before it expands outward. There are seasons of stillness, breakdowns that are actually breakthroughs, moments of chaos that precede deeper clarity. Yet most people, conditioned to expect constant motion, abandon the path just as it begins to deepen. Then there is the myth of spiritual passivity, the belief that to be awakened is to be quiet, agreeable, unshaken. But the mystics were not passive. They were rebels of the soul. Yeshua flipped tables in temples. Buddha left a palace and shattered illusions. Lao Tzu vanished into the mountains, choosing the silence of truth over the noise of society. Awakening often begins with unrest. It is not calm. It is a storm that clears the false and makes space for the real. But perhaps the most powerful illusion is the belief that awakening is rare, that only a chosen few are capable of reaching it. This myth keeps seekers small. It fuels hierarchies, cults of personality, and spiritual gatekeeping. The truth: awakening is not a destination. It is a process of remembering, of peeling back the layers of who you're not to reveal who you've always been. Yet the system trains you to fear this unraveling. You're taught to seek certainty, control, and comfort, when in reality, the soul grows in the unknown, in the void, in the sacred chaos between identities. Even within spiritual communities, a strange paradox unfolds. People escape mainstream conditioning only to fall into another trap: spiritual materialism. They swap brands for crystals, ambition for enlightenment, competition for sacred ego. But the core illusion remains: I must become something to be worthy. True spirituality is not about becoming more. It's about becoming less. Less attached, less reactive, less entangled in the illusions of status, story, and self-image. It is about dissolving the noise until only the essential remains. This is why ancient initiations were often symbolic deaths. The initiate would face darkness, emptiness, the collapse of identity. Not to be broken, but to be stripped down to truth. Today, few undergo such trials, not because they are no longer needed, but because society no longer remembers them. The modern world shields you from discomfort, but in doing so, it also shields you from transformation. There is a hidden architecture to this conditioning. It reinforces itself through repetition. You are shown the same narratives, the same roles, the same rewards, until you begin to believe this is all there is. It's a subtle hypnosis, and those who question it are often labeled as mad, radical, or lost. But madness, in this context, is simply refusing to participate in an illusion. The moment you begin to observe your thoughts, not as truth, but as programming, you've already begun to wake up. The moment you ask, "What am I without all this?" you've cracked the illusion. And from there, the real work begins. To begin the process of awakening from spiritual mediocrity, you must first reclaim your inner authority. This does not come from memorizing sacred texts or parroting spiritual jargon. It comes from stillness, from solitude, from the raw, unfiltered experience of being with yourself, without distraction, without performance. The most profound shifts often begin in silence. Try this. Each day, carve out a moment, 10 minutes, maybe less, where you sit in absolute stillness. Not to meditate with technique, not to achieve anything, but simply to be. Let the thoughts rise and fall. Let the discomfort surface. Let the quiet speak. This is not about discipline, it's about relationship. You're learning to re-establish contact with your own soul, which has spent years buried under other people's voices. Journaling, too, becomes a sacred mirror, but not the kind where you document your to-do lists or personal gossip. Instead, ask deeper questions. Who am I when I am not performing? What beliefs do I carry that were never truly mine? Where have I traded my truth for acceptance? These questions are not designed to be answered quickly. They are meant to disturb, to unravel, to initiate you into your own inner wilderness. Another powerful practice is conscious deprogramming. Begin to observe your daily life like a sacred text. When you scroll through your phone, ask, what emotions does this evoke in me? What is it teaching me to desire, to fear, to emulate? When you watch television or listen to a conversation, ask, what part of me is being fed, and what part is being silenced? Awakening requires this kind of ruthless honesty, not guilt, Not shame, just clarity. Rituals also help ground the intangible. Light a candle at sunrise not because it's mystical, but because it marks intention. Whisper a truth to yourself each morning. I remember who I am. Drink water as if you're nourishing the divine. Touch the earth as if it's your ancestor. These acts may seem simple, but when done with presence, they become holy. They remind you that sacredness is not confined to temples. It lives in your breath, your home, your choices. And of course, the path is not without resistance. You will be tempted to retreat into comfort, to seek validation, to wonder if any of this even matters. Society will pull you back with stories of practicality, normalcy, and growing up. But hear this clearly, staying spiritually average is not safer. It is simply quieter. And in that quiet, your soul dims. To stay on the path, find others who remember. Not to worship them, but to walk beside them. A soul tribe, even if small or distant, reminds you that you are not alone in this unlearning. And if you cannot find them yet, become the one who remembers, so others may follow your light. You don't need permission to awaken. You don't need a guru, a certification, or a new identity. What you need is courage. The courage to question, the courage to feel, the courage to begin again and again, each day, with a little less illusion and a little more truth. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of who you've always been beneath the noise. And slowly, the extraordinary will begin to seep into the ordinary. Your conversations will shift. Your desires will purify. Your presence will deepen. People won't always understand, and that's okay. This path was never about being understood. It was about remembering the language of your soul. You were never meant to live small. That quiet longing you felt, the sense that something vital is missing, it was never your weakness. It was your compass, a signal from the soul reminding you that the life you've been sold is not the life you were meant to live. Society, for all its noise and structure, was not built to nourish your spirit. It was built to manage behavior, maintain control, and perpetuate systems. And in doing so, it gently lowers the ceiling on what you believe is possible. Not by force, but by fatigue. Not with chains, but with comfort. It trains you to settle, to rationalize, to forget. But forgetting is not the end of the story. It is merely the beginning of the return. The truth is, there is nothing average about you. Beneath the roles, the routines, the layers of cultural conditioning, you are vast, limitless, wild with knowing. You are a walking temple of forgotten wisdom. You are the breath of stars made flesh. And no system, no tradition, no institution has the right to define your connection to the sacred. The journey of awakening will not always be linear, and it will not always be kind, but it will always be true. And that truth, raw, humbling, radiant, is worth every discomfort. Because once you taste it, once you glimpse the world through awakened eyes, you will never again be satisfied with mediocrity. Not in your work, not in your relationships, and certainly not in your spirituality. So ask yourself now, what have I accepted as normal that is actually numbing my soul? Or have I played small because I feared being misunderstood? And most importantly, what might happen if I stopped waiting for permission and simply began to remember? This is the invitation, not to believe, but to see, not to follow, but to feel, to step beyond the veil of cultural hypnosis and reclaim the sacred fire that has always lived within you. You are not here to be spiritually average. You are here to awaken, to embody, to remember, and in doing so, to light the way for others still dreaming. If this message resonated with you, then share it. Speak it. Live it. Let it echo through your actions, your presence, your truth. Because every time one soul remembers, the collective dream begins to shift. And perhaps that's why you're really here. Let the remembering begin.